Hey, everybody, welcome back to Guns and Gadgets, your premier source for Second Amendment news. Thank you for your time as always. And I'm doing a video that I usually don't do, but there's a specific reason I want to talk to you about it. This video is brought to us by the USCCA. If you are interested in protecting yourself or your family before, during, or after a lethal encounter, check out the uscca.com/G&G. Link is always down below. I use it for my family. I strongly recommend you check it out, as well as a lot of training and education there. And you can always cancel if you don't think it's up to snuff for you. So thanks to the USCCA for partnering with Guns and Gadgets for the last couple of years. I want to thank my partners here for joining in. We have Clint Macro from Pennsylvania, and we'll get into everything he is tied into in a sec. And Rob Pincus as well. Rob, are you in Florida right now or Colorado?
I'm actually at the Western headquarters. This is my first video from the new Western headquarters. I just moved out of the bachelor apartment and into another place in Denver. So I'm at the Western headquarters.
Nice. All right. So with that said, why don't we give you guys a couple minutes to talk about who you are, introduce yourself to everybody and what you do, because I know you guys have multifaceted stuff. So Clint, we'll start with you.
Well, sure. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my name's Clint Macro. I'm the founder of the Trigger Pressers Union, and I've been a professional educator now for I guess pushing a decade. I was helping people learn how to shoot here and there a long time prior to that, but really made it a business in 2013 when I formed the Trigger Pressers Union. And I was really into just teaching gun safety and teaching people how to use rifles and pistols and shotguns. So I was doing a lot of NRA stuff, and then I actually found Rob's material. I read Counter Ambush book, as well as the Combat Focused Shooting book, Evolution 2010, and it really sparked my mind. I really enjoyed how you looked at things, Rob, because coming from a musician background, the whole idea of having to really have expertise with your instrument to be able to play it intuitively so you can collect and process information from a crowd and from other musicians really made a whole lot of sense when I started reading your book about how to use a firearm in that worst case scenario, that dynamic critical incident. So I became a student of Rob's and started to take some classes with him. And I guess it was like around 2017, I did a DFC, or the defensive firearms coach. And we did that with Jamie Onion and started teaching Rob's entry-level classes. And then shortly thereafter, the whole combination of the USCCA and Rob came together with the DSF program. And I was very honored and fortunate to be involved in the development side of that as I became a better instructor and a trainer of trainers in that curriculum. And just recently, I guess kind of recently in December, I'm very honored to say that I am now certified to teach the intuitive defensive shooting program, formerly known as Combat Focused Shooting. So this has been a long process with me, and every day I learn something new about it and learn what I didn't know, and I'm able to continue to offer this material to my fellow Americans. The USCCA, I started working with them in 2013 is when I got the first textbooks from them and started incorporating that training into my life. And it dovetailed very well with what Rob was doing. And then the DSF program was the best next step from the CCHDF program, which was the Michael Martin curriculum. And Michael quoted you quite a few times in that textbook as well. So other than the Trigger Pressers Union, I'm also the second vice president of Firearms Owners Against Crime here in Pennsylvania, as well as the president of the Allegheny County Sportsman's League. And I still have my studio here, and I don't get to record too much music this day and age because I'm always traveling and teaching out and about. But I've been keeping pretty busy.
Cool, man. Thanks. And how's the little guy?
Oh, Augie's doing real well. He just turned 13 yesterday, man. I have a teenager now. I can't believe that.
Congratulations. Wait till he hits 21. I'm there right now. All right. Thanks, Rob. Most people probably know you one way or another, but for those who don't, we got a lot of new gun owners. Why don't you give the rundown of everything you're plugged into?
Yeah, so I'll go backwards. Happy birthday, Augie. I've spent a lot of time at Clint's house. I've watched Augie grow up. I feel like in some ways, I mean, just the way he is so mature and so articulate, and much like his dad, just a great communicator. And they do some cool YouTube stuff, and they have a lot of fun. And it's been an honor to be a guest in Clint's home with his family for many years as an instructor when he hosts classes. And to bring him into our family, our cadre of instructors as well. What he left out of that is he's also Like, I don't know if there's an NRA instructor level class that's offered that he doesn't teach. This guy teaches everything, the black powder pistol instructor course. I mean, just like everything that the NRA has offered. The guy he says it's only a decade, but Clint's one of the busiest guys I know when it comes to educating. So it's a great compliment to me and to our program and to the rest of the cadre. Really appreciate that he's dove in completely on helping spread the word to include the USCCA program. So I'm Rob Pincus. I own ICE Training Company. I'm the executive director of Personal Defense Network. I was 20 years ago next month, I left full-time law enforcement. It is one of the best decisions I ever made. I knew by then, after several years of reserve, and then a few years full-time, SWAT team, small city in Virginia, I learned relatively quickly that I was really way more interested in teaching and educating than I was the bureaucracy and the sort of the admin, and it's hard. I mean, God bless the guys that stay in for 20, 30 years and do that job in that way. It takes a brain that I just don't have and a discipline that I don't have. So I jumped into the private sector 20 years ago with the intention of being a defensive shooting instructor. Within a few years, I was running the Valhalla Training Center out here in Colorado and developed a curriculum which became known as the Combat Focused Shooting Program, which has now evolved into the Intuitive Defensive Shooting Program. And I teamed up with USCCA in 2009. So in the early and mid 2000s, I was teaching primary military and law enforcement. A lot of like the highest end warriors we have in our country. I've had the honor of being contracted repeatedly to teach Green Berets, Navy SEALs, to teach at Dam Neck, to work with really elite human beings that have defended freedom, not only for our country, but for all of humanity around Earth. And it was in the late 2000s that I really changed the focus of the company and my efforts to the ever-growing population of concealed carry permit holders, and now those who take advantage of constitutional carry opportunities. I went to the Military College of Vermont, and when I first moved to Vermont in 1990, it was the only concealed carry state. I think we're about to have 21 by the end of the year that will be signed into law as permitless carry states. And I got really heavily interested in developing a curriculum that would take the average human being, whether they were a shooter or not, and really try to prepare them as efficiently as possible for the defensive use of a gun in a realistic way when they were defending themselves or others, when they were going to the mall, not going overseas, not going through a door, not the flashy red and blue lights, but just living their everyday life as an armed citizen with way in the background somewhere, some intuitive skills they could apply when they needed it. So that curriculum evolved again, many, many times over the years. 2009 was when I started working with USCCA. I joined their advisory board at that point. By 2013, we launched what was my first distance education project and their first distance education project, the Counter Ambush home study course, which was all about the physiology, the neuroscience, the physics, the engineering, all the why do we train the way we train, why should we train the way we should train, and how do we best prepare to apply those skills when we really need them and we're caught off guard, that counter ambush response, which is what defensive shooting really is. And that evolved into an opportunity in 2017 to write the first live fire curriculum for the USCCA. So we took that opportunity, as I said, there's been several, I could put like 2010, the evolution book that Clint Macro talked about there, that idea that in 2010, we were ready to put out another book and evolve the curriculum. And then in 2017, we did it again with defensive shooting fundamentals with the USCCA. I'm incredibly proud of it. A great cadre of people. USCCA, ultimately they're there to provide that insurance program and provide that kind of comfort and assistance in the aftermath of a defensive gun use. That is their primary business. They're a membership organization. They make no apology for that. What I admire about them, what I've always liked about working with them, is that they are dedicated to the education of their members through their magazine, through their courses, through their books, through their advocacy, so that maybe they never need the assistance of the insurance, in the aftermath, because they've done everything right or they've avoided the problem. And that's why I'm really proud to work with them. So we did start that program. We launched it in early 2018. And I was super excited to find out that you were going through it, Jared.
Well, thanks, man. So before we jump into, I'll tie this in because I usually don't get into a lot of my background here on my channel for obvious reasons, because I just wanted to say strictly facts and no fluff. So why are we talking about this? So I've been a cop for 24 years. I'm going through the medical retirement process as we speak. And since 2000, I've been an instructor on the law enforcement side. And through my career, and we've seen quite a few different styles of shooting for police, and it's different in different parts of the country. So when I first got on, we were teaching, the old hats who were still in the modified Weaver. We were still teaching those guys, and we've now, with the last few years, we've gone towards what we call the isosceles style, which ties really good into DSF, the defensive shooting class here, what we're talking about. And I didn't know that. So in dealing with USCCA, I had told them what I was trying to do and was interested in their program. And I didn't know either one of you were in the program or as an instructor or whatever. So I took the concealed carry home defense instructor class about a month and a half ago, and then took the DSF 1 class just so I could see on the user end what it's like, because I try not to, I'm not one of those guys who think that, I've been teaching for so long, so I know better or more than this guy. So I wanted to see exactly what I was getting into. Took that class with Bill Dalpy from Patriot Firearms School. Solid dude. It was a good class. If you guys and gals are in the Rehoboth, Eastern Mass area, check him out. And then I took the online learning, the distance learning part for the instructor class. And 2 weeks ago, took the instructor class with Clint. So it was really, really cool. I took it because I'm retiring. So while I can teach police right now, or corrections, or even military level, but it doesn't really, when that's gone and the badge says retired, it's a different world now. So I wanted to be able to have certifications to teach civilians, the civilian level, just so I can keep doing it because I love teaching. And that brought me to that class, and I'm really, really glad I took it. And that's why we're doing this. This isn't the type of video I usually do, but I want people out there to realize that this class exists and there's a great value to it. Whether you're a new shooter or an old shooter, I've been pulling the trigger for a long time, and I learned a lot out of this class, both on the user end and the instructor side. So it was really, really refreshing. We've all taken those classes where you just focus on being the good student because maybe the material's not as new or you're not really getting as much out of it. That didn't happen in this class on either the user end or the instructor end. So my hat's off to both of you. Clint, the way you taught, the way you teach is very admirable. I really liked your style and locked onto it. Rob, the way the class you've developed is, I find a lot of value to it, and I'm not smooching up. It's really, really a good class for somebody who has decided that they're going to carry a gun to protect themselves or the others, and can just jump right into it and learn what they need to know and be effective at it really, really fast. So that's why I wanted for us to just get a quick little get together. So thank you both for doing it the way you do it. And I've never taken a class with you, Rob, and this was my first exposure to that. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a really good class. You knocked it out of the park with it.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. We got it. I know we tried to get together when I was up at Cape Gunworks. You had some stuff going on, and I was only up there for a couple of days. I'm back up in Massachusetts, September. I do work with Goal every year. I do a week of fundraising classes with them. I would love to team teach with you, right? Because now that's the thing. Now that you've gone through the instructor development, I love it when the guys that are, and I know you're not a new instructor per se, but in this program, it's new, right? Mm-hmm. I love it when the guys that are new to this program, and Bill Dalpy was one of those guys over the last couple of years, and Clint was one of those guys over the last few years who spend time with me, with Jamie Onion, with Barrett Kendrick, with Derek Poole, the guys who've been teaching this way with this methodology, this curriculum over the last decade. The mention of Michael Martin and the CCHDF. Michael Martin, before he worked with the USCCA, reached out to me in the probably late 2000s, maybe right around 2009, 10. He reached out to me and asked if he could cite some things from the original combat-focused shooting book for his Minnesota Guide to Concealed Carry. Well, that Minnesota Guide to Concealed Carry evolved into, after he partnered with USCCA, the USCCA's Concealed Carry Home Defense Fundamentals. So that's why there's so much ICE training company material, references to me, references to like the intuitive defensive shooting stance, the extended shooting position, lowered center of gravity, weight forward, all that stuff came out of the 2006 book, believe it or not. And then obviously it's evolved and been updated as well. So it really is very synergistic. And as you said, I was the guy who showed up writing articles in, as we know, like I'm no stranger to controversy and I don't really shy away from it. But in the late 90s, I was the guy writing SWAT magazine saying, yeah, this whole bladed weaver stance, you guys are crazy. This is not how this thing works. Like, look at the dash camera, because in the late 90s, we saw the dash camera videos, right? We started to have force-on-force training with simunitions. This is not how people behave in especially defensive counter-ambush fighting. They don't stand up straight and blade. They don't even stand up straight in isosceles. So let's train the way we fight, not try to train the way that works best on the range or the way some guys in the 80s thought was the best. And I often say, like, what I was teaching in 2003, it's evolved, it's changed, but it was the best 2003 stuff I had, right? And I'm sure, like, that was the best 1987 stuff and the best 1995 stuff and the best when I was going through the academy in the 90s, that was the best stuff they had to offer, but it wasn't the best stuff possible. So we've been shaking it up, hopefully, and pushing forward. And I taught a class yesterday in California. I'm going to teach a class tomorrow in Colorado. I told the class yesterday, I'll tell the class tomorrow, ask questions, challenge the material, because that's how we get better. And it was harder when it was, this is the way we do it, Sonny, was what I was being told in the 90s. I hope Jared, heard that from Clint. I know Clint hears that from me and everybody else. Like, you're the new guy. That means you have the best fresh mind to challenge this and help us make it better.
No, absolutely. Yeah, Clint left the floor wide open for people to ask questions or challenge the material, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's the death knell of any organization. This is how we've always done it, right? And so, especially when you get those new gun owners and those folks in the classes, that's where me as an instructor, where I really saw more potential in the material and other ways to explain it. When I worked with someone that wasn't wearing like gun glasses, and it was truly a housewife that, well, she'd say, I'd never pick up a spatula like that.
Right.
Well, okay, that kind of makes sense, So having the fresh mind, as Rob said, I think is very important. And yeah, absolutely. In the short time that I've been involved in this methodology, Rob, you've changed definitions, different words to use, different phrases based upon new science and other ways of looking at it. So I find that to be very refreshing, most certainly.
Yeah, it was good to see. And like I said, this isn't the usual type of video I did, but I thought the class was that valuable that I wanted folks to know it exists and to hopefully open some more eyes to it. So with that said, Rob, in designing this class, if I'm somebody who is new to a gun owner, like when I took the user level class with Bill, we had somebody in the class who just bought his first gun 3 weeks prior, and by the end of the day, he was handling his business. So this is your pitch for the class. What is it intended to do? And as the new gun owner watching this who wants to get some training, what can they expect?
Yeah, I think that's just it, right? It's I want this program to be the most efficient way for somebody to develop skills that they can own and, again, apply. It's not about performance, right? When we chase performance on the range, and it's interesting, like Clint makes that very educated reference towards musical talent and using an instrument. And there's things he can do in that studio that and correct me if I'm wrong, Clint, but I feel like if you're like, I don't know, the ultimate connoisseur of the engineering and the mixing and the getting the everything just right, like the Steely Dan approach. Like, we're just going to be in the studio we're going to do it 900 times, and we're going to take half of the 803rd one and half of the 605th one and put it together. If you're doing the engineering thing and you're really trying to make it perfect, you can obsess over that, and it's in a controlled environment. But when you're doing the live on stage thing and the audience is going and maybe the PA isn't perfect and maybe the drummer wasn't, quite sober when he started or whatever, you still got to do your thing as the guitar guy or the vocalist and make it work. And to me, that's what application of skill is. So for the average person, I talk a lot about driving. Think about the way you learn to drive, right? Like, your hands were at 10 and 2 and you were scanning the mirrors and you adjusted everything and you're watching the gauges and you're looking for the pedals. Or if you were learning to drive stick, you're like reading the map on the gear shifter to see where 3 is, right? But within 6 months, you never look at the gear shifter again. You just know how to shift and you know where the clutch is. And when a deer jumps out in the road, you look at the deer. You don't look at the brake pedal, but your foot goes to the brake pedal, because you just know how to drive. And a musician knows how to play his instrument and can key off the band and the audience and all those things Clint said. And I want the gun owner to be in the mall thinking about buying the shirt, and then something happens and they can find those skills, the intuitive application of the skills they develop on the range. So a lot of it is not about the tightest group or the fastest draw from concealment. It's about the most applicable, reliable, sort of robust way to apply the skills in a way that is contextually appropriate for defensive use. So not only the new shooter, but as I hope you saw, and sort of what you know, taking what you said and paraphrasing it in Rob's mind, it's like even a guy who's been teaching this stuff for 20 years and doing it for longer than that got something out of this class. So whether it's called, whether it's combat focused shooting or intuitive defensive shooting or defensive shooting fundamentals, level 1, level 2, we did the whole curriculum for the Gander Mountain Academies, all 6 of the Gander Mountain Academies when they existed. Countless agencies and military units use this program. The Defensive Firearms Coach program that Clint Macro talked about earlier, like it all comes back to the same intuitive skill development fundamentals.
And that's a good thing too that I found about the class. It was not, I mean, it's not going to come out the right way, but it's really condensed where you get the most out of it in the shortest amount of time. And quite interestingly enough, in a time that we're in with ammo being such a big issue,
right.
Yeah.
It's not a high round count class, which is huge nowadays because people can still take the class. And we've all been to it. I mean, we could all talk about the classes where we shot 1,000 rounds a day or in a 4 or 5 day class, shoot up a couple of cases, but you get more out of the lower round counts because there's more training value. At least that's what I found in my years.
Well, there's a difference between training and practice. So I tell
right.
I'd rather you go home with ammo because you're not going to own these skills after one day. You can own the concepts, you can understand the training methodology, but you need that repetition and practice over time. So yeah, if especially nowadays, I mean, I'll tell you, when we first started this program, we were shooting over 1,000 rounds in 2 days. Like in 2003, 2004 version with the Valhalla Training Center, we were telling people to bring 1,000 rounds, and they were shooting more than that in a 2-day class. Nowadays, we do tell people 400 to 500 rounds per day. But that's the extreme, and almost always people go home. We want them ready, like in case we do a high round count class, but it's always less than that. And these days we're telling people show up with 300. And I think the class that we did on Saturday was essentially the DSF level 1, and I think they shot 300 to 350.
Yeah, that's about what we did on the first day, I think, with you, Jared.
Yeah, which was refreshing because there were guys there that didn't have that much ammo. But it's also good to know that there's that much training value in the class that it can be accomplished with 300, 350 rounds. And, the guys and gals taking it get a lot out of it.
Yeah, well, I think it's very empowering because, competency is such an individualized and subjective trait. That's one of the things that we talk about when we start the day off. And people are using what the body does naturally, but also it happens to be that what the body does naturally under stress. So it doesn't take a whole lot to kind of figure out what to do. And if they're doing it the way we ask them, we'll start to see some results, whether that's fast or slow. Again, that's all very subjective to that individual. But that's why that guy that showed up in your class that brought the gun in the cardboard box with the price tag, at the end of the day, he was rocking the holster because it's not rocket science. So you take the old style paradigm of defensive training, like the NRA methodology, where it's, we've got 5 fundamentals and we start off with that, and then we work our way down to, and there's also some point shooting too.
Right.
This goes in the exact opposite. We get people using their body and pointing the gun where they're looking, and they're focused on the target, which works better under stress. And then we see results. We start to work on a little bit of speed there, and then we introduce them to the sights. Here, use them when you need them. And I think people can wrap their head around that process much better than, well, the defensive stuff is level 3, ma'am. You know what I mean? So I find it to be very empowering, and people from all walks of life, different shapes, different mobility, different mental capacity, if they're having an open mind and doing what it is that we ask them to do in the program, by the end of the day, they start to feel more comfortable with carrying that gun or having it next to them on their nightstand.
And one thing I'll say to Rob, one thing I really liked about the class, the way it was designed, is for 20 years, I've had to teach people to shoot for the qualification. I've had to teach them to shoot to that 80%, bare minimum standard.
How many extra seconds does your department give to blow the dust bunny out of the hammer before you go to full extension?
Well, after I took over, none. But prior to
okay.
that, it was, there was no real pack timer, strictness.
Okay.
But to see it go from, training for the win versus training for the score, if that sounds right. That's a really, really big thing for me, as a trainer's view. that bird's eye view to get somebody to be prepared for the victory immediately in a class, rather than you got to get that 80% or you have to come back next week. I think that's a really good thing, especially for a new shooter.
Well, one of the things
that kind of.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just saying that I want to not get too far away from what you said, Clint, earlier, but it ties right into what Jared said. This idea that we're not training for, again, I'll go back to what I said earlier too, the range performance. We're training to be able to apply these skills in this hypothetical potential, right? And we can narrow it down, like the work that Tom Gibbons has done, where here's the data, here's what usually happens. Well, then let's train most ardently, especially at the beginning, for the thing that's most likely to happen when it comes to the defensive gun use, and not the defensive gun use like, hey, I'll defend myself, you better leave, and the guy runs away. That's psychological stuff, but the actual physical, I need to shoot the guy. So when and again, go back to why I left law enforcement. I was the smart ass, right? That was like, whoa, we have to get 80%. Great. I'm going to get the fastest 82% I can. Right. Yeah. So I was a shooter for it. So I'm bang, 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 bang. And like, I'm looking at the guy next to me like, man, at 2:00 in the morning, are you really going to take 6 seconds to fire 3 rounds from the low ready on the whistle? No. Right. So why don't we get the fastest 82% we can instead of trying to get a 98. Right. And then I get the training sergeant, right? Well, you're ruining the department average, Pincus, or why are you screwing around, Pincus? Then I get on the SWAT team. We got to get qualified at 95%.
Yep.
But we still have to do both quals. You know how it is, right? So the bureaucracy. Okay, I'll do 82%, and then I'll come back in a minute and I'll do 97%. And then why didn't you do 97% last time? Because I didn't have to. And why would I try? Because I don't want to shoot slower. I want to be more effective on the target. I want to fill that box, right? So we talk about defensive accuracy. Well, then that segues kind of into what Clint was talking about, this idea that what we're trying to do is develop the right skills first, not teach marksmanship. I'm not trying to teach people to hit golf balls at 100 yards. And that's what most shooting programs do, is we start with the fundamentals of marksmanship, not the fundamentals of defensive shooting, right? And people have to know, like, this wasn't just let's wing it and hope, right? Like one of the advantages I had in the early 2000s and was this opportunity. I call them my white mice. We were running that military law enforcement high-end executive protection training during the week. And on the weekends, we had recreational customers that would want to use our 360-degree shoot house, right? They'd come in, they'd pay for an hour or two with an instructor, go through guided and shoot, reactive targets, interactive targets. There were sound effects, smoke, light, all kinds of different scenario rooms, mannequins that fell down when you shot them appropriately, pop-out targets on motion sensors. And I'll call it a game. It wasn't really a game, but the challenge became to how fast and how little do we have to teach these people who were coastal elites, right? Like not gun people at all. They just wanted to try it. Like, oh, I can train where the Navy SEALs trained. I can shoot where the Navy SEALs shoot. That sounds cool. How little do we have to teach them to take them into a dark room with loud sounds and strobe light effects and a mannequin 15 feet away? How little do we have to teach them to get them to extend, touch, manage recoil, press, hit the target in the center until it falls down? Well, we had it down to one magazine. We would do, the single shot, guided, extend, touch, press. Then we would do the single shot up. Then we do the multiple shot and teach them to manage recoil, their weight forward, lowered center of gravity. And by the end of that 15-round magazine, we were going into a 300, the most, what Rand Corporation said was the most advanced close quarters armed defense training facility in the country in the mid-2000s. And they were going through that shoot house, dropping targets to include the headshots on some of the hostage-taking targets. And we were doing it without even mentioning where their finger touched the trigger. We weren't talking about breath control. We weren't talking about sight alignment, sight picture, right? It was intuitive fire and smooth trigger press and good recoil management and kinesthetic alignment, using their body well. And that sort of proved it. So I always say I didn't owe those people anything more than no extra holes and a smile. Mm-hmm. I couldn't take my gut feeling about how it was better to train and more efficient to train and do that with armed professionals. I couldn't do that with people who were carrying guns, at the Walmart and the mall until we proved it could work. And everything came together in the early 2000s, and we were able to prove that this approach works, and it's honestly more efficient.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because when I took the class with Bill, we had a little powwow after, and I was telling him, like, this, and being on the LE military side, like, there's no sight alignment, trigger press, there's no grip stance, none of that. And he was like, no, man, it's all built into it. And I was like, really? And it just makes sense, especially, and we could, as instructors, we can talk this all night long, but
Yeah.
we'll go into something else real quick. But if you're watching this and you're thinking about getting training, which you should, no matter how many classes you've taken, you still haven't taken them all, I would strongly recommend the United States Concealed Carry Association's DSF-1 class. And with that said, Clint, give somebody your best sales pitch on try to help them internalize why they should take this class.
Well, first off, do some research on it, because I want people who are instructor, people that want to take the class, or people who want to ultimately become an instructor for this. I want them to have like intellectual buy-in. And I think that's the first part. If they want to take the class, they can go on to the USCCA's training site and find any DSF instructor across the country that's putting it on the end user level. I have some coming up myself, actually, if you look on triggerpressersunion.com. But as far as the instructor development goes, I have an instructor development class in Alabama coming up in July that's booked out. The USCCA has a number of them in Wisconsin coming up. I believe Derek Poole has one in Atlanta in August. And I think Barrett Kendrick is looking to book some in California later this year. So if you keep an eye on Barrett and Derek's website, you might see their dates as well. But if you have a small investment of time, most people don't have multiple days to go train and feel comfortable with carrying that gun. This is the best class to do it, because in a short amount of time, in a very efficient manner, you will, provided you're doing what we're asking you to do the way we're asking you to do it, you're going to be able to get consistent hits in the high center chest and understand how to use your sights. And then, through frequent and realistic training, as Rob said, going out and practicing on your own to get those reps, you'll be able to understand when you need to use sights or not. But I find it to be very empowering, and I really enjoy teaching it, and I hope to see some of you guys out on the range.
Awesome. Rob, same thing. End user, new person, give them the best condensed sales pitch.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it just comes down to efficiency, right? Your time is valuable. Ammo is expensive. Ammo is hard to find. And this is, I get it, that you're a dentist, or you work in the garage, or you're a stay-at-home mom, or you're an educator, or you're a cop, whatever it is. This is the off-duty stuff. Even if you have the cop training, even if you were in the military, even if your uncle was a cop and he taught you how to shoot, this is the best way, I think, obviously, to spend a day. You're going to spend a few hours getting ready in the distance education, learning the concepts, and then spend a day on the range with someone who can coach and guide you personally to develop skills that you can access when you need them, when you're not thinking about it. It's not competition shooting. It's not marksmanship. It's not hunting. You don't have to be a shooter. You don't have to be a gun person that wants to hang out at the range every weekend. This is the most efficient way to develop those skills.
Yeah, and I agree. One of the good things taking the end user class before I jumped into the instructor side was, in the academy, we teach the 40-hour class, and you usually don't see that light bulb go on, that aha moment, until sometimes day 3, sometimes day 4. But at least in the class I took, that aha moment happens really quick, which is really good to see, because once the people see that, yes, this works, the buy-in's there, and then they're all absorbing it after that. So if you're somebody who is interested in protecting yourself and being really good at it, instead of, being that person who always wonders what happens if, I strongly suggest checking out the USCCA courses. There are a multitude of different classes. It's not just this one we're talking about. So check them out. I really think there's a lot of value there, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. We'll jump into a couple other quick things here. You guys both are plugged in a lot of areas. Clint in Pennsylvania. I know there are a lot of people who live in Pennsylvania that watch the channel here. You guys got some stuff going on. You want to give them a quick update if you can, if you have any new stuff going or new
Sure.
info for them.
Two of the biggest pieces of legislation that we've had some traction with is, let me look at my sheet so I get the numbers right. I always get the numbers wrong.
I'll edit it right out. I'll ask the question again if you want.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Constitutional carry, HB 659. That we got that through the Judiciary Committee in the House, and it's kind of stalled right now. We're doing some behind the scenes to try to get that one up for a vote. If people would like to contact the Majority Leader, Representative Benninghoff, we need to urge him to bring that piece of legislation up for a vote. In the meantime, our strengthening preemption law, which was House Bill 979, it actually made it to the floor of the House and passed. So it's currently in the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is a huge, huge thing. As you guys may or may not know, I was involved with the Pittsburgh litigation that took place in 2019 when the city of Pittsburgh passed ordinances that violated state preemption laws. And Firearms Owners Against Crime took them to court. The Allegheny County Sportsman's League took them to court, and FOAC beat them. They struck down the ordinances. And of course, with unlimited funds from Mayor Bloomberg, the city of Pittsburgh has appealed that. But we feel pretty confident that's going to come out in our favor. We have Joshua Prince as our counsel. He also was representing us with the Allegheny County Sportsman's League. And because they ruled favorably for the FOAC case, the judge said that the Allegheny County Sportsman's League was moot. So we ended up appealing that. So we're currently just kind of waiting around for that. But the thing with the strengthening preemption law, it puts teeth into our preemption law. So when a local mayor, whoever, a local official passes a law that supersedes state gun laws in regards to guns or ammunition, it's struck down in court because that's illegal in Pennsylvania because we have preemption. But there is no recourse with that. So when this, say, mayor passes this law like Peduto did, it gets struck down. Okay, fine. Who ends up paying all the bills? Right. Firearms Owners Against Crime, like I think we're like $60-some thousand that we had in that one, and County League was like $38,000. So like who pays for that? So what this preemption bill does is it makes the elected official personally liable for court costs and lawyer fees. So not only would that be a great thing for liberty, but that also would be a great thing for a deterrent. And it's similar to what they have in Florida. The law is very similar to the language of what they have in Florida. So this actually was the law of Pennsylvania, but it was brought through as there was a technicality with it, and the court knocked it down and took it away. So we're real hopeful that this will make it through the Senate, and whether or not the governor votes or vetoes it or not is to be seen. But regardless, we need to get this thing through, and we need a lot of the Republicans that are claiming to be pro-gun to be on the record as voting pro-gun. So we're really hoping that this gets pushed through the Senate here in the very near future.
Awesome. Anything else going on a personal level you want to talk about? Let people know.
There's some stuff coming up, but I'm gonna hold off on that. I'm good. My son's 13 and I got a teenager upstairs. It's unbelievable.
Congratulations again.
He's about this shy of being as tall as I am. Although I got a little more girth on him. He's gonna have to work on that. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I give him a hug now and it's like this.
Soon he'll be looking down on you.
Yeah, probably by Christmas maybe.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your crazy schedule to join us here. It means a lot. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Rob, I know you're plugged in all over the place like a spider. So why don't you talk about what you got coming up?
Yeah, it's sometimes it feels like I'm stuck in the Matrix with all the plugs. Maybe I've got. I wrote a letter to Benninghoff myself on that HB 659 in support of FOAC and the gun owners of Pennsylvania. There, I think Pennsylvania is one of those frontline states across the country that we really need to be paying attention to. When I grew up in New Jersey, as you guys know. Like Pennsylvania was like gun freedom to us, right? It's not Arizona, right? But it's not Utah, but it was always to me a very pro-gun, gun freedom kind of state. And obviously they've had some difficulties last few years. So I'm glad that preemption is going your way too, because that is a very, very powerful tool in defense of liberty and small government and less government and all the things that we libertarians want. On my radar right now, obviously pistol braces, that's a big deal. We got heavily involved in talking about pistol braces back in December. We posted 2AO.org. I'm the executive vice president of Second Amendment Organization. At 2AO.org, you can find an article with the letter that I wrote as a sample letter published there, talking about all of the concerns around pistol braces when this first came up back in December. Now it's back in the news and people were able to comment again. Again, I never suggest cut and paste on those, but I do recommend that every gun owner gets involved. I know Gun Owners of America has a link that you've talked about. They make it very easy. Firearms Policy Coalition, all of the organizations, we try to make it easy for people to learn how to do it and how to do it well. It's so important that you're concise, that you stay on topic. If we're talking about pistol braces, we're not talking about, just broad shall not be infringed. We're not talking about waiting periods. We're not talking about slippery slope. We're just talking about pistol braces. And there's so many important reasons to talk just about pistol braces, and why really at the end of the day, the ubiquity of pistol braces to me proves that the regulation around SBRs is misguided. And now that we have short barrels with 4 points of contact and face support and body contact in common use, hundreds of thousands of them across the country in common use now, it proves that the NFA is misguided and should be struck down, at least in regard to SBRs very explicitly. So I think there's a bunch of good points people can make there. And the other one is gun making. The regulation of parts, moving towards European style serialization, where all the major components have to be serialized and are considered controlled items. We don't want that. We don't want that mess. Brownells doesn't want it. Primary Arms Online doesn't want it. Big Daddy Unlimited doesn't want it. The manufacturers don't want it. The NSSF doesn't want it. NASGW doesn't want it. And to be honest, I don't think BATF wants it. I think this is all politics. They don't want to have to monitor that stuff. They know how almost impossible it would be with the number of parts and barrels and slides that are out there in the country right now. Trying to go backwards on this makes no sense, and it's going to save 0 lives. It's not a safety issue. It's a political issue. So talking about gun making and the sale of gun parts and gun kits, incredibly important. And later this week, I'll be down in Florida at my home range, Ancient City Shooting Range, and we're running with Guns for Everyone National the very first gun makers match, division for builds on kits and division for 3D printed guns. Gun Owners of America is one of our sponsors. Firearms Policy Coalition is a sponsor. Brownells is a sponsor. Obviously, Polymer 80 has been huge with us in there. The AWC Are We Cool Yet group from the 3D printing community is helping us with the technical stuff and support. Super excited about that. So we sold out the match. We wanted to do kind of a controlled experiment with this first one. So we have 50 competitors, another 25 people that are staff, volunteers, and sponsors. So we have 75 shooters. Probably about 150 people will be there eating lunch, T-shirts. Look for the video, look for the pictures. Super excited about the gun makers match.
Cool. Now, do you have for the entrance? Do you have a prerequisite that they prove that they made a comment?
No, we probably should. It's one of those things, right? It's like it's that church and state stuff, right? It's like we were talking about training. So now we're talking about the politics. When I put my training hat on, like we're talking about training, and honestly, if somebody shows up to a class and they're like, "Look, I've got a Glock. I don't think I need an AR." Hey, you know what? Your Second Amendment is your Second Amendment, and I'm going to teach you how to use that Glock. And we'll talk about ARs maybe, after the class. And I feel like now we're after the class, we're getting into politics, and it would be really disappointing if there's people there at the gunmakers match who aren't actively involved in defending pistol kits and supporting the companies as well as the do-it-yourself stuff. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this gunmakers match, and a lot of the people involved in it are excited about it, including NASGW and some of the other organizations, is that this really makes it clear that this is a freedom hobby. This is something people are proud to do. It's fun. It's educational. You learn more about guns. You appreciate guns. It's art for some guys, right? It's like they're really proud of what they do. This isn't some nefarious, ghost gun. You're only doing it to keep your gun off the book so it doesn't have to have serial numbers in the shadows. Criminals making guns with 3D print. That's not what this is. It's a freedom hobby. It goes back, obviously, before we were controlling federal firearms licenses and manufacturers and big companies. People were making their own guns and they were making their own defensive tools. And this goes back to the first rock that got sharpened for human beings being capable of defending themselves and those they care about with tools. And, it's something that's really important to me. It's really important to, I think, the entire idea of self-preservation and self-reliance and responsibility. Gun making is tied into that. Tool making, right? It's what distinguishes us from kind of like every other animal on the planet, this tool making and use. And I know there's some details there. Somebody's going to the anthropologists are going to jump in and tell me some animals use tools. I get it, but not firearms. We do that pretty exclusively.
Well, there is that one video of the monkey in Africa that started shooting people with an AK, right?
I don't think he made it, though. I think somebody gave that to him, which, by the way, is a mistake. I'm going to say right now, I'm going to go on record. Irresponsible gun ownership to give a monkey, gorilla, or any ape, whatever, any of the family of primates other than humans, a gun. Irresponsible gun ownership.
Yeah, you need that quotable thumb.
Yeah. Hey, one last thing, if I could mention, because I wasn't thinking that this show is going to come out like tomorrow. June 19th is National Train a Teacher Day, our 4th annual.
Oh, yeah.
Just to give that a quick plug, National Train a Teacher Day is a grassroots effort where instructors from all across the country have volunteered to give their time to teachers, school staff, administrators, and anyone that works with youth in a leadership capacity. And if they go on to nationaltrainateacherday.com, they can find an instructor in their area or nearby them where they can take, maybe it's firearm safety training, defensive training, first aid training. There's a whole lot of types of training available to those folks on National Train a Teacher Day. And by the way, the United States Concealed Carry Association, as well as TASER and Saber Red Pepper Spray, Secure Equipment Corporation, are all sponsors of National Train a Teacher Day. We also worked in conjunction with DC Project and A Girl and a Gun. They've all helped to kind of promote it with this year. So it's a really great thing for people to check out.
Awesome. I'll throw the link down below too. Yeah, guys and gals for watching, thank you for hanging with us. It's been a longer than normal video, but I hope you get a lot out of it. I hope we raised your intrigue in this class. I hope you actually take some of these classes because you're never done training. You're never, ever done training. So please remember that. And also make those comments like Rob was mentioning, the firearms frame and receiver, the pistol brace, and also get in touch with your senators because this Thursday is the 17th. And David Chipman will be getting his markup vote in the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. We got to stop that guy from getting confirmed. So, guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you hanging out. I know you guys are both very, very busy. We'll just leave it that way. So thanks a lot, man. I'm humbled you guys were here. I appreciate it. And guys and gals, thanks for watching. Until we see each other again, be safe, stay vigilant, carry a weapon. Take care.